my camera because it's quite messy.
Yeah, I know. We're live. We're going to have to look through the messiness at you. Who's here? Okay, well, also the plan mark. Good evening to everyone who's here. Themba isn't joining us because Eskom screwed him, and he has got no connection. My own connection is also terrible, and will be terrible until the end of August. So please just bear with me if I kind of phase in and out of reality, and if you can't hear me properly, I will be back. Kgofu, how are you doing, brother?
I'm good, and you, bro? And you? How are you holding up?
We're cracking on, mate. And there's a couple of interesting points of discussion that we wanted to bring up. And the one, as was the banner image of you shooting there at Tac Shack Defensive Shooting Club a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
The importance of sport shooting and how it really leads to a community or a body of farm owners that are responsible, that are knowledgeable, that are proficient, that are safe. And I suppose why this assault on sport shooters by limiting us to like 6 guns that we can essentially do bugger all with, and stopping us from reloading ammunition and stopping us from transporting the amount of guns that we need to participate with. Why this is bad, why killing sport shooting is bad. Because everyone just tends to think, oh, okay, but it's some people competing for recreational purposes like playing golf with guns, which it's totally not the point. So maybe unpack your experiences with it a little bit. Give me your side, and then I can always try and color in from there.
When you say my side, is in terms of how I feel about the amendments or about sports shooting in general?
I think both. Like address both, and we can tie those together in a nice little bow, big bow.
Yeah. Look, I mean, you know my stance. I mean, from the beginning regarding these ridiculous amendments, I've always been of the view that we should not even entertain. We all, I mean, I'm pretty much against it. And it's something that, for me, it's not even negotiable. You know what I mean? Because I mean,
I think we've just lost your audio there. Okay, now it's come back. Are you on 2 different speakers, by the way, or microphones?
Can you hear me? Is it better when I do that?
Yeah, that's way better. That's way better.
Is it? Oh, okay. Maybe I should just hold my phone. Like my screen is bugging me the way it's so. What's my phone? The way it's so missing.
We're super professional stream guys. Super professional. Sorry, carry
you know
on.
What I mean? Yeah. Look, I mean, I don't support the current amendments. And funny, I mean, I had a chat with Terence from IRR this week regarding the fact that a lot of people, and this is unfortunately the one issue that we might end up sort of having to sort of fight as well. We might have the state coming back and saying, okay, great, we will not remove self-defense, but we will push through with the sport shooting amendments. You know what I mean? And that's the one thing we got to be very careful of, because everyone is obviously going up in arms, and I think we've got to be very clear in the sense that we're saying, look, we vehemently oppose the whole bill. You know what I mean? But with regards to sport shooting, for me, I mean, I've been participating, I think, since 2012 now. I actually started shooting before Tac Shack had a club. We were shooting with under Victoria Defensive Pistol Club, PDPC, owned by Agent Rosby in Washington. And I remember I actually used to be the only jockey there, man. But I used to get lots of free beer, which was very cool and built on.
So you went there for the free beer and the biltong?
Pretty much. Every man has got to have his vice. You know what I mean? And for me, it was the beer and the biltong. You know what I mean? But I started shooting around that time, and I think you get to realize it always starts with, I want to own as many guns as I can. But as you start sort of, as you progress with the sport, you realize that, this is actually part of the bigger sort of picture or the bigger portfolio of your training. Because with sports shooting, you learn how to reload. You shoot under pressure. You're on the move. You know what I mean? Someone is actually timing you. Someone is actually looking at your movements, and that really contributes to your own sort of development from a sort of progression point of view. And we all know that majority of the time, for people that have never sort of done sport shooting, their definition of shooting is going to an indoor range most of the time, sometimes an outdoor range, you know, gripping the firearm, pointing it at the target, reading, squeezing that trigger, you know what I mean? And then you have time to look and see, oh, I kind of hit it a bit to the right, you know, and then adjusting again. But in actual fact, it doesn't really happen like that in real life, you know, and sports shooting kind of
Exactly.
also adds that element, you know, because you're shooting on the move, you're reloading, you sight acquisition quickly, you know, you're constantly trying to get better, you know, and that's the beauty with sports shooting, you know.
That,
And
that,
for me, I mean, that's what sort of added, you know.
well, I'm going to add in on that, and this maybe Wilson's got an idea. Maybe if you go directly just through the phone without the earphones is
Oh, is it? Maybe let me try
yeah.
that.
Let's try that because the audio will hopefully be better.
Is that better?
That's hugely better. That's
Is
so
it?
much better. Okay.
Great.
Well, that's the whole thing, right? So you are forced to improve persistently and consistently under that regime of sports shooting. Is you're not
Yeah.
just compared to a set datum of performance, you're being compared to other people as well. So there is some sort of benchmark you can strive to achieve, and you can actually tell if you're improving or regressing to a large degree. Yeah, okay, everyone's happy with your sound now, so it's way better. For the
Great.
audience, I'm going to do a big daddy liberty. Please hit the like button if you don't mind. It just helps bump the stream's visibility up to other people who may be watching. Makes a big difference actually on the whole YouTube algorithm. So thank you very much. It is fortunately free. The like button is still free for now. Not
Yeah,
many free things.
definitely. Hit that button, guys. You know what I mean? It's good for the page. You know.
But on that as well, this is also why it's so important with this amendment bill for people to oppose the thing as a whole, because
Yeah.
you rightly bring up the concern that we don't want the self-defense angle to be like, okay, cool, that's viscerally opposed, we're going to remove that, but we're going to bring the sport shooting and hunting restrictions back, because then we
Yeah.
don't win at all. That's not a win. It's still a massive loss.
Yeah.
So and if sport shooting disappeared in this country, it would just
Travesty.
it would be a travesty.
It would
It would
really be a
destroy
travesty.
the industry.
I mean, I don't know if a lot of the guys know this, but I mean, you know, sports shooting is actually part of the Olympics. The only time when sports shooting was never part of the Olympics, I think, was I think 1924 in another year.
Yeah, there were
You know what I
2 years
mean?
where sport shooting wasn't part of it.
But also it's you know it's for me it's something that in actual fact the state should actually be promoting because it improves proficiency. You know, when you shoot within a group of people, naturally you want to get better because there's competition. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? And the first thing they teach you with sports shooting is safety, ultimate safety. You know what I'm saying? You want to make sure that as you're moving, as you're sort of moving across, and shooting different targets, you're not sort of pointing the you're not pointing the muzzle at anything or anyone that you don't want to see destroyed.
Exactly.
You're cognizant of that. You learn the quick reloads. And you learn the fact that sometimes you gotta, you know, go aim and actually shoot within a matter of seconds. Because in reality, most of the time, that's what happens. You don't. It's very rare that you sort of get an opportunity to say, "Oh, something bad has happened. Let me pull out my pistol. Let me point, aim, breathe, boom." You know what I mean? Yeah. Oh crap! I missed it. Let me hit him again. You know?
Well, that's the thing, and I think Graham sort of touches on the unfortunate reality in a large way, is that the government doesn't like a well trained and proficient armed populace because of the inherent paranoia behind it. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to talk about Zuma because I'm so tired of that topic. I mean, you and I and Themba speak about it offline all the time, but it was again an example, the sheer amount of law enforcement resources that were present at that site.
Yeah.
I mean, and we are told that oh no, you don't have a van to spare to respond to the robbery that just happened in your house, but they've got that kind of resources to go after one 79-year-old politician. And the reason he's charged is not even something major. It's merely contempt of court. I mean, it's not murder, it's not rape, it's not anything that grand. That does illustrate that a lot of our processes are unfortunately politicized, and the hazard of that comes back to, we are unfortunately living with a paranoid government who's not always receptive to rhyme and reason, but they are receptive to pressure. And I think that's something you mentioned in our previous live stream, is that we need to start putting serious pressure on our political representatives to back us. The DA has responded to that pressure. A lot of the other opposition parties who didn't want to take a stand has positively responded to that pressure. There's no reason why the ANC cannot be forced to respond to that same pressure, at least in theory. I don't know what you think.
Even is it ACDP or ADCP? I'm not sure the Christian party. I mean, I don't want to sound weird, but I didn't expect that. I didn't see that one coming, and boom, they came to the party. And it shows you that, at the end of the day, it's about the right to life, isn't it? I mean, more than anything, it's about the right to life. That's the first most important thing, and then followed by that, it's obviously you get the other, the sport shooting, and it's very important that we continue to exert this pressure on the ruling party. They should never forget, what we're capable of. I don't think we've obviously shown them what we're capable of. They've seen the submissions, on the petitions, but
yeah, and the online unity and
rubbing that support. You know what I mean? We need to put more pressure on them in a nutshell. But also, I mean, you and I are on Twitter a lot. And I read a very interesting tweet today where someone said the amount of resources that were deployed in Kandla shows me that we actually shouldn't be having a problem with gender-based violence, rape, murder, and all of that. You know what I mean? And it's true. It's true. I mean, the fact that you could, gather up so many resources, like you're saying, to go arrest a 79-year-old man, it's not like Zuma is a murderer or anything.
And it's not like he's going to run away. I mean, where's he going to go?
I mean, I'm sure
I'm
sure the state secret service or whatever it's called in this country, has the floor plans to Nkandla. So it's not like he could escape out of the bathroom into his tunnel,
Yeah, it's no Saddam Hussein trickery. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to happen.
But you're right. It's politicized. Everything about this is just politicized. There's really nothing about that is not politicized about this. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we go into level 4, and then boom, the judgment is given for him to go to jail, and then a few days later, another judgment is given not to release, the Cyril monies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that was just to segue to that, because that's very interesting to me. By the way, Themba has been ESCOM'd. He gave me a call just before the stream was due to start to tell me that he's sitting at candlelight, not a romantic candlelight dinner, unfortunately. And yes, I think Chris's take on, before I talk about the Jay-Z lockdown, because there's something very interesting about that. Most of us got into sports because our first guns were our self-defense guns. That was the gateway drug. And we decided, okay, we're way more interested in seeing what's coming next. So we started participating in
you there?
proficiency.
Yeah, there we go.
Sorry, that's my connection. What I was saying is that to build skills, proficiency, and confidence in what we have, and you taking that away through these amendments would undermine the whole concept of safe, responsible firearm ownership. But be that as it may, so Jay-Z got knocked on the Wednesday, and the Thursday.
Gideon, I actually just want to jump in there, and I want to relate an example of something that happened a couple of years ago on the range where we used to host, these Tech Loshi adventure shooting sessions. And I remember we had a chap that I know personally come to the range. He had bought himself this nice SIG SP 202, and I think he bought that gun probably maybe bought himself 10 rounds, shot it at the indoor range at the shop, and then got his license. And then he whipped it out during the session, and he's like, "Guys, can I shoot my gun?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And then he took it out and he pointed it downrange, and nothing happened. And we were all just looking at him because we thought, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe he's about to figure this out. Until someone jumped in and actually sort of started saying, "Okay, wait, let me see what's going on." And sort of, I think there wasn't even a bullet in the chamber, and it shows you that this is the beauty of sport shooting, is that you get it for self-defense, and you can either put it in the safe, carry it on you, or go to the range as often as you can, or join a club and become that much more proficient. Exactly. Imagine if that had not been, if that was like a real life situation where you had to use his firearm.
And that's exactly why I encourage people to you don't have to take up a formal sport shooting discipline. You don't have to go pick out of the smorgasbord of what's on offer and say, "Cool, I want to do this thing, pay the association fees, and I'm not going to participate every weekend." You can really scale it down as low as you need. But I'd recommend to try and at least get on a shooting range once every 2 months. Like once a month would be great. And all you need to achieve some sort of skill development is a box of 50 rounds and a plan. Go and figure out what you want to achieve with today's session. Go shoot it. Make note that you have participated, and before you wipe your eyes out, you're an occasional sports shooter with a whole bunch of things that you've participated in. And then if you like it, you go that step further and you become dedicated, and a whole new world of firearm ownership opens up to you. And it's none of these things are difficult, but it requires the fact that you be a bit enthusiastic and interested.
Yeah. So, but also, just to jump in there quickly before I forget, isn't it amazing? If you were to go on YouTube, right, the amount of, even on online, on the website, the amount of content that is out there that can actually help you. You could have never handled a gun in your life, right? Go on YouTube and read, all these websites, and actually pick up a gun and probably know, how to handle it safely just by reading stuff online. You know what I mean? I listen to a lot of Travis Haley, for example. He's got quite a lot of, great tips. I think he's ex-Marine or ex-SEAL, runs Haley Strategic Group right now. Guys like, who's the old man? The great old man. Larry Vickers.
Yes, Larry Vickers.
Larry Vickers. Guys like that. They literally have 5-minute videos on YouTube, demonstrating how to draw, how to increase your speed, how to grip your gun. Sometimes you take for granted the basics. And these are things that, if, for instance, you can't afford the 50 rounds to go shooting every now and then, those are things that you can actually incorporate into your dry firing process. These are things that have certainly made me better, by just listening to those, and you'd be surprised how many people don't know how to grip a firearm properly. I've seen some really weird shit out there, and I'm like, whoa, that thing's gonna fly out of your hands. You know what I mean? Just proper grip and stance. You know what I mean? How to manage that recoil. You know what I mean? Sight alignment, things like that. This is information that's available on video know-how. It's not like you have to go and read books like back in the day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Well,
this
this is the
contributes, to making people better.
this is the whole thing. And like, how's it, Donald? It's great to see you. I believe you're a newbie on our stream, so awesome stuff. And dude, 80 rounds a month is excellent work. Yeah.
Do what I can.
So I personally am a big fan of Dave Spalding stuff. Handgun Combatives is his channel. Also, Old Man Uncle Dave. But I mean, what an absolute font of knowledge. Between him and Masada Yub and Kelly McCann being the American guy combatives.
Yeah, great dude, great dude.
I'm probably going to have Arno Barlow on the weekend, and we're going to talk a little bit about this issue of Americanizing stuff to South that isn't always necessarily relevant to the South African context. But when it comes to basics, those guys have got it down to pat. And I think someone once told me that the definition of an advanced skill is just basics done better. And that's where consistency with dry fire regimes in the comfort of your own home is important, because the amount of skills development you can do with either a cert pistol or a your gun with a dummy round in it, or those laser training cartridges, it's humongous. And you're not burning thousands of rounds of ammo. You are literally doing this in your study or in your lounge. And
in actual fact, I'm sorry to jump in.
No, go. That's the whole point.
I was reading an article by John Carrera, self-active protection, I think, right? And he was saying that he's observed 5,000 gunfights, and one of the most important things that he sort of observed is the first person to draw and put a bullet underneath it. Most of the time is usually the person that's likely to win the gunfight. Obviously, not all the time.
Not all the time.
That's what we're talking about in terms of learning how to dry fire, because that will help your speed, your draw. You know what I mean? Because once that pistol is out and that shot is out of the barrel, you know what I mean? And then he also says something very interesting. The best cover is actually active fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because it's very difficult to take accurate shots at somebody who's taking accurate shots at you. And I think people underestimate the amount of difference that putting an assailant under pressure like that actually does. Now, I mean, I think both of us have been at enough club shoots and leagues over the past 10 years, where you've seen fairly like shit hot guys, with their little multicolored sport shooting shirts on and their speed rigs, and they obviously aren't idiots. They know what they're doing, and they completely miss a torso-sized target at 10-15 meters just because they're under pressure. They cannot put a hit on that target, and you look at that and you go, okay, people are missing at that type of range. I mean, a couple of weekends ago, I was at a club shoot, and we just, on our final stage, we put IDPA targets up at 20 meters. I mean, it's not that far. I mean, that's a fairly decent handgun engagement range. And all you had 3 targets, and you just had to stand static, engage the one, move to another position, engage the second one, move to another position, engage the third one. The amount of people that just couldn't consistently get hits on those things were impressive. And I mean, now imagine that other target is shooting at you and it's moving, and it's moving to a position of cover.
And more often than not, it's not even one target; it's probably multiple. You know what I mean?
That's the thing. So putting hits on the targets at 20 meters with a handgun isn't that easy. Even at 10 meters, you can see people miss it completely. And even then, they might not even hit. Go for it.
Similar to you at a club shoot about a month ago, actually. Steel target, but I think about a couple of meters out. And I hit them thinking, but come on, I'm aiming. I'm even slowing down here. But I'm still missing this crap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it happens. It happens that you miss shit. Even when it's not shooting back at you. And even when you're breathing, even when you're standing still, it happens that you don't hit it, you know. And it shows, stress really does impair your skills, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And you gotta
big
sort
time.
of learn to rise above that, that stressful situation because, and once you learn how to do that and you get in the practice, and, you get better at it. You know what I mean? And that's why, like you're saying, you know, great skills are just basic skills done repetitively. You know?
Well, that's just to try and kind of break the misperception that people have, is they think, okay, you have to put in, you somehow are going to transition from a basic skill set, and then once you do it enough, you're going to be taken into like the secret 1980s action movie chamber with people doing fucking coming down with ropes from the roof and helicopters and silencers and
John Wick.
explosions to start. Yeah, you're getting the John Wick skills later. It's like that's not really how it works. The John Wick skills are the basic skills, just done at a higher level. So, I mean, shooting and moving is still doing the same basics of shooting you did in the very beginning, but you've added another element to it, which is you are moving at the same time. Shooting from behind cover is exactly the same fundamentally as shooting or standing up out in the open, except you are now applying it differently to a different environment with slightly different dynamics, but fundamentally it's still the same activity. All these shooting at a moving target is no different than shooting at a static one, except you are now anticipating movement.
Yeah.
That's where being a stable platform with trigger control and all your fundamental skills of stance, grip, trigger, squeeze, sight alignment, side picture, all these things come into play. It's still the same thing. Why
And
practicing the boring stuff is
people
important.
forget. People actually forget that. I mean, even those John Wick moves that Keanu Reeves was pulling. I mean, he had to actually go and practice and train, with Terran Tactical to become that good even for a movie. You know what I mean? It's not like stuff was actually being edited there. I mean, he actually had to put in the time to do the training, to get that fast. So what we were actually seeing was actually his training coming in. Yes, the only difference is that it's a movie. It's not really
Yeah.
real, but the man actually put in the training, and I mean, we've seen the footage on, the man was there, he was shooting, practicing, training, you know what I mean? And it shows even with the movies, you still gotta put in the work,
And that's the thing. It's
true.
Yeah, you're going to go and this is why getting those drills. I mean, the internet. We're coming back to the point you mentioned. The internet is full of useful information. It is unfortunate at the same time full of fairly useless, depending upon context. A lot of useless information is useful when you put it in a different context, but there is stuff that's genuinely useless, and there's stuff that's even outright dangerous. Now, and a lot of if someone how to spot, in my opinion, and it's a pity Brian isn't here because he would really actually be able to give a good opinion on this, but how to spot someone you shouldn't train with, if it's more about their personality and who they are and what their background is versus what their capacity to facilitate you learning is, then you might not be with the right instructor. As soon as it develops into a personality cult, as soon as it starts developing into dogmatic systems of belief, as in we only train empty chamber chicken wing because that's the way it was trained in Israel in 1948, then you might
Israeli style.
Israeli style. You may be sitting with a system that's dogmatic and not actually grounded in current reality. If you're sitting with an instructor that is a celebrity instructor overseas that has an Instagram and a YouTube, and he does all sorts of funny things and he wears all sorts of funny clothes, and he's selling you training, you might be buying an experience with a persona. You might not actually be buying training that's useful for you, especially if he's teaching you how to do cartwheels around a car and a plate carrier and a helmet. As Dave Spalding said, if you're a plumber or if you're a teacher and an accountant, under what circumstances are you in your daily life likely to get into a situation where you're fighting with your gun with all that equipment on you? I'm not saying don't train it. It might be fun. You might enjoy training it, but ultimately you might want to just be good at defending yourself and other people with your 19 or your H&K.
Oh, I'm losing you there.
Yeah, sorry, it's my connection. For those who've just tuned in, my connection is going to be this potato thing until end of August. So hopefully life improves then
But also it's the coolness factor as well that sells, isn't it? Because a good portion of it is you gotta look cool. No one is gonna train with guys that look like me, wearing glasses, a hoodie, and a jacket, kids screaming in the background. You know what I mean? Type of thing. They want like a real. I mean, what's this guy's name? Chris Costa. Is it Chris Costa?
Yeah, they want the tactical beard and the wraparound
Yeah,
sunglasses
you know what I mean? Like jumping out of airplanes and skydiving, tactical rifle, maneuvers, you know what I mean? And that's the thing that sort of, I guess that's the thing that sort of attracts a lot of the people. And sadly, for a lot of newbies, that's where they start most of the time because that's where a lot of your views are, and the algorithms just sort of take you there when you're sort of starting out on YouTube. But after watching a couple of those and sort of spreading your wings, you realize that this doesn't look so realistic. I mean, I don't really wear cargo pants to work. I actually wear a suit. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing, and it doesn't mean that these guys aren't good instructors. In fact, they might be really good for a given context. They might be superb. But I mean, the guys that I've had the pleasure of training with locally, the two ones I've trained the most with being Arno Barlow and Mark Himman, both of them have kind of the same. They say the same thing differently in the sense of don't just train with one guy, like train with a whole bunch of guys and take from the training that what makes sense to you and leave behind that what doesn't. But ultimately, the more training you do, the more you develop a sense of self pertaining what's relevant to you, what works for you, because we're not all the same. And it's how can I put it? There are various things that come into play. So one of the things that people ridicule on the internet is they go, "Oh, you can't say, oh, it works for me," and it's like, depending upon context, I guess you can't, but most people can, because we're not the same creatures. I mean, we're different builds, we're different strengths and weaknesses, we have different lifestyles, we have different personalities. What works for you, Kgofu, in a training context and a gunfighting context and a carry context, I mean, sure, there's lots of stuff that's universal. It might not work for me. I mean,
But even aside from the training, I mean, Gideon, let me show you something very interesting. I mean, let's look at, we all have this idea that you've got to sort of carry, when you're carrying a Glock 19, it's got to be in a Kydex holster, and you got to have a cord belt. And that stuff is really, really cool. It's very functional. But let's think about the fact that most of us are working from home today, right? In this day and age. You wake up and you put on your tracksuit pants. You know what I mean? And I mean, the nice older tactical belt is not really going to sort of work. You know what I'm saying? And some people actually go jogging in shorts. Now you can imagine, how do you sort of get stuff working? All this shit has got to work for you. At the end of the day, it's got to protect you. You know what I'm saying? Because you wake up, and life happens. You know what I'm saying? Life happens. You don't just wake up and get into your 511 tactical pants, and your blah 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 tactical shirt. You know what I mean? And look and hop into your Ford Raptor and then go shoot some bad. You know what I mean? You wake up, you go running.
That's exactly it. Yes. And to add to that, I've got one or two interesting things. Mr. Punisher, and anyone else who wants to train with me, I'm never fully booked. I'm not that popular, but you're more than welcome to come train with me. I've got an intro to handgun.
We're working on his YouTube ratings. We got to get him some tactical pants. He's going to be fully booked soon.
Yeah,
book him now.
Button. Yay. But you can book me via that email address that was just on the screen. And I've got an intro to handgun running at the end of the month on the 31st. That's very much to newbies. but it's also for people who'd like to maybe get exposed to a couple of different options pertaining cleaning, maintenance, how the various firearms work, their safety mechanisms, carry options, all that stuff. But speaking of like tracksuits,
And I gotta say, Gideon, I mean, I'm glad you're doing that course because, like you're saying, basics. People forget the basics. You start with the basics. You know what I mean? Like you're saying, handling a firearm, the grip, changing a magazine, cleaning the firearm. We have a lot of guys that are out there that actually don't have some of this knowledge, but yet have firearms. You know what I mean? And I really want guys, and I encourage guys to really, join you on that training to learn these things. Especially first time gun owners. Because those are things that we take for granted. We really and those are that's the foundation of everything. So guys, sign up.
Yeah, before you can fight with the gun, you need how to know how to handle it without like being a hazard to yourself. Yes, Jason, occasionally we do. So now I'm going to trigger Jason, right? Because I often hang around in tracksuit pants and shorts, especially when I go running or I'm going up a mountain or something like that, And I carry in a Undertech belly band and the Glock 19, and here we go. Here's the infamous line. It works for me. I've never had a situation where it's come undone, where it's been uncomfortable. The only hazard is when you carry in a belly band like that and you're doing something active, make sure you clean the outside of the gun quite thoroughly at the end of the day, because there's going to be sweat on there and that's going to rust your gun.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be all gooey and sticky.
It's going to be exactly, but that's work. Now you get the other guys who pull up their noses for us troglodytes with the belly bands when they're dressed like that, and they do this new Filster Enigma thing that's almost unobtainable, but you can get it for like nearly 2K, and it's a little G-string looking thing that you slap around your body, and you have a little garter belt that goes around your thigh, and then your holster plugs into it. You can carry your gun appendix without having to wear a belt. It's what did he say?
I was actually chatting. I was chatting to Themba about it. He got himself one, and I was actually saying to him that I believe that Philster is actually probably one of the few companies in the industry that actually creates functional equipment. I mean, aside from the fact that the Enigma is quite expensive, but I mean, it's really an amazing piece of kit. You know what I mean? I mean, even if you had to look at the holster, we all know that Parex is very uncomfortable. Half of the time, it's really scratching up against your nuts. And you're
especially when you're wearing it that close to the family jewels, it is uncomfortable.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's gonna bruise. It's gonna bruise you. Pool noodles.
The Jews don't get a shave. And I really love the personal stuff because I really think they're functional. They take into consideration that there's part of the holster that's got to be smooth. There's parts of it that's got to sort of protrude. You know what I mean? And sometimes that you need guys like that actually go in and say, you know what, screw aesthetics. Let's look at functionality for once.
Exactly.
I mean, I used to have this thing where I used to go. I jog and I do the gym because I used to be a big fatty. I have to sort of try and keep it lean, And I used to take my Cold Steel Spartan, and chuck it in my pants and go to gym. But it always used to bug me. Like, from leaving the house up until the gym, anything can. Look, we could have someone who's going to come into the gym and start shooting people up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just decided to buy myself like a Smith & Wesson shield. And got like a crappy holster to start with, but it did the job. And I could literally conceal it, put it in my tracksuit pants. It wasn't sagging. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I mean, it comes with what? A 7-round magazine and an 8-round magazine. It's still better than nothing. You know what I mean? And I can go jogging out in the neighborhood. I can go to gym, conceal it nicely, And those are things that happen. Those are things that happen. And that's the practical
And that's also, that's the kind of one downside to the sport shooting world, and it's something that the discipline I'm shooting in addresses it. The others haven't quite gotten there, but do something that allows you to shoot in your EDC gear as much as possible. I mean, so that you can, for the purposes of not only getting used to it, but also for the purposes of going, okay, but I get to train and see if my stuff actually works. Because if you've got something, whether it's a holster or a carry position or a gadget of sorts, if it doesn't work the way it's supposed to work, you might only figure that out, when it's too late, unless you go and try it out. Yeah, I must organize a massive paintball war for all my viewers. I'm actually fucking keen to do that. Sorry about that. But just to trigger Jason again. Jason's got a thing that resembles a flappy paddle gearbox on the back of his Glock. So, the old tractors that you see like on the farm, and it's got that thing on the top, and every time the guy hits the gas, it goes, brrr, on top of it.
It's like the ones that they put on the 4x4s now. What do they call it? I used to have one on my thingy.
Yeah, he's got one of those on the back of his purple Glock.
Jason has a purple Glock.
He's got a purple Glock.
I'm leaving. I'm in the UK, guys.
Jason has a lot of problems, but the purple Glock ain't one, or that's at least what he tells me.
I mean, if I was robbing Jason and he whipped out a purple Glock, I would leave him alone.
It would just be embarrassing to get shot with, but it's all the stuff he adds to it. Like he carries it in a Fulster Enigma. He's got like the thingamabob on the back of it. I mean, my God.
Probably even has a gas pedal on it.
All he needs to do is be sipping Starbucks and wear a flannel shirt, and you can't get more hipster than that. My God, Jason.
Oh, gosh,
He was born in the wrong. Jason should have been in the 1920s with the beatniks. It would have fit right in.
Yeah. And guys, by the way, we're not saying there's anything wrong with cool gear. I love cargo pants. I would love to own a pair of Arc'teryx, and pay 5,000 rand for a set of cargo pants and look really cool and tactical. But it's got to work at the end of the day, isn't it? You got to make sure that when that moment comes, then shit works. You know what I mean? And the truth of the matter is, I'll take myself for an example. I've got 3 kids, right? And majority of the time is, I'm wearing tracksuit pants. I got to take people out of the car seat. I got to be shouting at the kids half of the time. You know what I mean? You're going to the mall, you're carrying plastic bags, you're pushing a trolley. You know what I'm saying? And I have to be able to get my gun as quick as possible. I got to make sure that my kids are safe. I got to make sure that, I'm able to operate that pistol and actually operate in that highly stressed environment with my kids and my wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you can get gear that is cool and allow you to and somewhat make it possible for you to do that, go ahead, do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. And Sam, thank you so much for the super chat. So I super appreciate it. Sorry for that, it was cringy, but thank you. I really do appreciate it. And Chris makes a good point. Like, it's always better to try and blend in, when you carry a gun, as opposed to looking obviously tactical with your shoot me first jacket and your 511 pants and your lower pro boots. It's my EDC is a pair of jeans, like old khaki stuff. But the reality is this: like, chances are you may be wearing a pair of boxer shorts, a string vest, and if you're lucky, slippers at like 0 dark 30 when the shit really goes down, and you're still going to be rubbing the sleep out of your eyes, and it's not going to be pretty. It's really not going to be.
Or you might even be taking a shit.
You may very well be in what's the politically correct term for this, in a suboptimal situation when things go sideways. And I don't think you're going to be allowed to be half naked and on a toilet at the shooting range and practice that. But
Don't kill
but
me.
but but
Dude,
when
imagine.
but when the stuff goes sideways, the fundamentals are again going to remain the same. And I think that's the point. Whether it happens at 3 a.m. and you're on the crapper, or whether it happens in the middle of a crowded shopping mall, or whether it happens in your driveway at lunchtime, or whether it happens at the gym after work, the basic fundamental skills you need to apply are going to be the same. The context in which you apply them is going to be different. And I suppose that the more intermediate to advanced level skills that would be useful for you, like fighting in and around buildings, or fighting in and around vehicles, or fighting while injured, that stuff is cool. That's good to know. But don't aim for that unless you've got the basics down to pat, because ultimately, what was Dave Spaulding's great thing? He's like in a fight, shit happens. That's why a top tier SEAL Team 6 operator gets taken out by some illiterate backyard farmer like twice his age with a rusty AK, because lower skilled opponents very often triumph over higher skilled opponents with superior gear. It just happens.
And we've seen the footage. I mean, we've seen all those military airplanes coming back with bodies.
Hang on one sec. Sorry, Kgofu. I just muted you quickly because there was a weird feedback loop happening with your audio. I'm just going to try and sort it out before we lose all the audience. One sec. Okay, that's a bit better. That's way better. Okay, sorry. Carry on.
I was saying we've seen the footage, of all the military planes coming back with bodies, right? And these are guys that train left, right, and center. These are guys that got some of the best equipment out there. These are guys that this is a guy you wouldn't want to be fighting against. You know what I mean? You don't want to be fighting this guy even on his worst day. You know what I mean? And we've seen them come back in caskets. They get very
And the guy who killed that guy was not a special forces operator. It was
he
quite
was wearing
likely. It was an illiterate peasant with a Cold War era assault rifle made in the 1960s. So you can.
I mean, he wasn't even sure if that AK was going to work. Probably, he was just there, protecting his religion or belief.
That's it. So again, that's why a fixation on gear, even a fixation on advanced level of training, none of it is misguided because it has its merits. But
not true.
It is not that important when you really boil it down to brass elements. Like if you've got something that's going to go bang every time and you're fairly good at using it, you're dangerous. You are a dangerous man.
Definitely.
And Francois' question, and please jump in on this as well, Kgofu. For someone that's starting out, okay, I'm a big fan of traditional iron sights purely because I don't have astigmatism to the level where I need the red dot that puts everything on the same plane. Jason's got terrible eyes, so he really does benefit from the red dot. It's a whole different skill set.
Yeah. I would start with iron sights as a beginner. I would start with iron sights. Like you're saying, shit happens. The battery runs out. You know what I mean? The sight might crack. You want to sort of start with the iron sights. It's kind of like a manual and automatic. You know what I mean? You want to start with learning how to drive a manual because automatically you just sort of fall into place. You don't know the basics. That's probably not a good example, but I would start with iron sights. I'm a big fan of red dot sights. In actual fact, I'm a Delta ambassador.
Oh yeah, you are. You are the ambassador for the dots.
Yeah. But start with iron sights. Start with iron sights. Get comfortable with them. And when you step on that red dot, remember that you also still have your iron sights there to co-witness anyway. But I would start with iron sights for you. It looks cool in a gun and all, but hey, just start with iron sights if you can.
Yeah. And the other downside, or not the other downside, the other thing to bear in mind about to present and push out and acquire that red dot every time. It's a different thing than presenting and acquiring the iron sight. So it takes a fair amount of training and practice and repetition to become good at both simultaneously. I mean, I'm fairly good with iron sights. You give me a gun with a red dot on it, I'm going to struggle to get used to acquiring that dot until I've really spent time
Have
with
you
it.
seen those guys that are that battle to find the red dot? Like they're like, I can't find it. Is this thing even working?
Yeah, I've
That's why I
seen
don't like these things.
because people have an unrealistic expectation that the dot's going to make it. You're instantly just going to be good with it, and that's not quite how it works. You have to put in the time. You have to put in the
You have
time
to
with it.
find
It's
the
like,
dot.
look, once you've got it, and once you've got it nailed, you're going to be faster with the dot than with the
Yeah.
traditional irons, especially when transitioning between targets. But um, again, and this is not me trying to be a dick about it, in a in an actual confrontation where you're shooting at other people, how quickly do you have to transition between targets? I mean, you kind of, before you put lead into something that's breathing, you have to be really sure that it's something that deserves to be shot. It's
No,
not
very
quite
true.
like,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's very, very true. That's very, very, very.
Yeah, Kgofu's sound is awful tonight. I apologize on his behalf. He's
Is
dealing
it
with,
is it still not sounding good?
it's
Oh
doing all
man,
sorts of weird and wonderful things. Like, I tell you what, I'm gonna just at some point buy you a microphone.
I think it's my PC. It's getting a bit old. I probably need to get like another PC or something, or maybe just transition to my tablet or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Um,
think, yeah, it's speaker feedback. So hang on a sec. I'm just going to do that while I'm talking, because then at least we're all saving it. Because so what I'm going to do, Kgofu, I think we're reaching the 1 hour mark. I think people are also getting tired of us talking nonsense. But let's do this. Let's try your tablet next week, folks.
yeah.
If you've enjoyed this discussion, in spite of the connectivity issues, Themba not being here, my face, Kgofu sound, thank you for tuning in.
Yeah.
If you want to train with me, you know where to get me. Kgofu, anything you want to end off with?
Um, Guys, sign up with Gideon. Do that course is very important. Let's get the basics right. And just another thing that I actually wanted to say was, I genuinely believe that we also need to start re-looking at sports shooting. One of the things that we've been speaking about obviously tonight is how some of the things that you do in competition shooting is not really that practical. You know what I mean? You're using a speed rig, all that stuff. And I think we need to start incorporating real life sort of setups and situations, where you're actually shooting you know, from um, from concealment. You know what I mean? And go to a match where you're wearing tracksuits, where you're wearing a suit. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. Let's have a makeshift bed there. Let's have a makeshift toilet. Let's have a makeshift shower. Let makeshift kitchen, things like that. And I think we need to really start incorporating such things into sports shooting, because it also makes it a little bit more practical. For 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 a lot of guys as well. You know what I'm saying? Because remember, you got to do the sports shooting. Over and above that, you still got to go and train with someone else. So it's kind of more money. And if we can have some of these things incorporated, I think it would really be really really awesome. You know what I mean? But also, I think we also need to start looking at the whole structure of competition shooting as well. I believe that, I mean, the average round count now is what, 150 rounds, you know? And you mentioned, I don't think there's anything wrong with shooting a match with 50 rounds. Some people can afford to shoot 50 rounds and that's it. And we should have space for such people. Just as much as we have space for people that carry, you know, other guns that are not blocks. We should be able to sort of relook at these things. Just to also, it's also going to help us to grow the community and make people more proficient anyway. So yeah, that's pretty much what I want to say from my side.
In a bit, but
Can you hear me?
I'm here. Hang on.
Oh, for a moment, I thought you froze it.
Sorry, my connection went. So it's about to tell us to go. My final thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, and others, it's exactly that, is 50 rounds. Most of my club shoots are 50 rounds at this stage, and it's 50 rounds that are focused on achieving a specific goal. And it might only be 3 or so stages, but it's 3 or so stages that have a plan behind them. And that means it makes it accessible to people that don't have a small house of money to throw at it, as well as it sort of, it draws people in, and we can always go bigger later. But folks, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for bearing with my bad connection, Kgofu sound. We'll improve the situation.
It will be better next week. It will be better. We promise it will be better next week. I'm going to use my tablet.
Awesome stuff. Folks,
all right, have a great night, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye-bye.